Welcome to episode 19 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast for sharing tips, apps, and gear for iPhone and iPad, along with related technologies that get us using iOS in a fun, productive, and meaningful way. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and joining me as always is Melissa Davis. Happy New Year, and how are you, Melissa?
Happy New Year to you, too.
This is our first episode of 2018.
It is. What a good way to start off the year.
Yeah, with all kinds of crazy Apple stuff that's been going on lately. You know, there's all been a lot of news of the day and all the crazy things that have been going on with them as of late.
Apple's been busy, and we've been busy catching up with it and trying to catch our breath. I don't think I've caught my breath yet, but that's for multiple reasons besides just software.
Yeah, so... let's dig right in. I had a couple topics I wanted to touch upon, and of course, everybody has been talking about lately is the two things: is the Spectra with the processor serious security vulnerability for iOS and for Mac OS,
and everything else,
Intel processors, not AMD actually, it was ARM processors. But the first big thing that happened while we were away was the battery issue and the problem. Finding out that Apple was making phones slow.
You're like me. It's like, I don't want to use the TH word. Yeah. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about that.
Yeah. Well, the battery gate, they had to come up with all kinds of that. And let's face it, I mean, I talked about this yesterday during while we record this at my iPhone special interest group over at the Suburban.
We kind of have to talk about it.
Suburban Chicago Apple users. Everybody had a great time yesterday, and this was the topic I had to talk about. And it was. I think we spent a good half hour alone just talking about it because everybody asking tons of questions. But really, the bottom line of what happened with it is Apple had seen that the batteries were deteriorating, and what was happening is it was causing the phones to just suddenly just reboot and restart. And I think what Apple was aiming for was to have a better user experience as opposed to worrying about performance.
I think they were trying to mitigate problems, like not being able to dial 911 when you needed to.
Yeah, and
things are important.
And not being able to, and your phone just all of a sudden mysteriously rebooting for no reason. So what they had to do, and to keep it simple here, is they had to put some software in. This is going back to actually the 10.2.1, I think it is. So it was iOS 10 before iOS 11. So they put this in place, and it was slowing the phones down, and people were starting to notice it. So of course, the first thing people are thinking, "Oh, Apple's doing this because you have to buy a new phone." Oh no, you don't have to buy a new phone. And honestly, Apple has been very fair with phones. The 5S is the furthest past back you can go with the latest version of the OS. And
even still, though, look, I'm holding in my hand right now, just because I've been tinkering with them. I've got two 4Ss. Now, how old are these phones? These are like, 6 years old or something like that?
6,
I mean,
these
have been around here for a while, and my kids are still using them. They're still perfectly serviceable. Yeah. They have a use case. I mean, and then I have everything going back to a 3GS. Now the 3GS, I mean, the battery popped out of that one, but I still have an old iPod. I mean, you can still repurpose these devices. Are they mainstream? Heck no. But the fact of the matter is that these things last. When I talk to my family members, sorry, I'm a little going off on a rant here, but I get so sick and tired of people saying, "Oh, you got to buy a new phone," and well, you don't have to. There's nothing you have to do. It's a matter of what meets your needs. But I constantly am talking to family members who have, and not to bash Android, but they have like cheap phones, and
they too.
They're constantly replacing them. Like my sister's like, "Oh, I got a new phone. I got to re-import my contacts." And I don't know. I hear people talking about other phones that are not Apple phones. I'm not just going to pick on any one thing, but they're constantly complaining about having to, I'll get a Facebook message from somebody, I lost all my contacts, so text me and, so I can re-put it back in my phone. Like, I've never had to do that in I don't know, over a decade. How long,
I mean, Apple's
so you get what you pay for, you get what you invest in. It's a matter of priority. Right. If a communication device, a handheld communication device, is important to you, and you don't want to have to constantly keep having to replace the hardware and constantly have to redo the software all the time, then to each his own. You're going to have to pick your battles there.
I mean, and then the problem with Android is there's so many different versions of their OS. I mean, you can't even keep up. I mean, at least Apple is with the iPhone and iPad. They keep it consistent. Now your 4S, of course, that's the end of the road. It's at 9.3.5, but that's fine.
It can't be. I mean, the security is going to be an issue and that sort of thing. But for what it's being used for, it's fine. You know,
there obviously there's people out there. I mean, I just sold one on eBay and someone paid. I think I sold it for like $50 or something, and I was fine with that. I mean, but I knew the phone is old, but someone might want to use it. Let's say they travel overseas and they want to have a phone and don't have to want to spend a big dollar amount to have an extra phone that works overseas. You know, there's all kinds of different ways you can use the phone. So.
But the point is that the hardware is made so well that they're still serviceable. They're still serviceable phones. They'll still work as a phone if you want them to. And if you don't need them to, you could use it as an app. You know, you lost your Apple TV remote or something. I mean, they can be repurposed. They can be used in classrooms for little, when teachers are giving out a quiz or something. Right. You get a bunch of old iPhones that you buy off of eBay or even just old iPod Touches, and you can still use them for that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to have the latest software on it just to be able to do that. So
that was the big thing I was against, people saying, with Apple bashing the fact, we're making them upgrade. Well, no, they're not. Like I said, Apple's been supporting it back at least 3 to 4 years of every model phone that's out there. They're not. They know people want to. Some people want to keep their phones, and unlike me, I'm an early adopter. I always have to have the latest and greatest. But there's plenty out there that stick with the phone.
And there's me who keeps everything forever and ever until it dies. And that's fine. I'll put it in a museum if I have to, But fine, I got a little agitated with all of the constant you have to upgrade, you have to do this, you have to do that, it's so expensive, blah blah blah. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But it was just kind of aggravating to have to hear it constantly beaten like a dead horse over and over again.
No, and it is what it is. The only thing that kind of was disappointing with Apple is the fact that they did do this without telling people. I mean, they should. Yeah. I think they should have at least let people know that they are doing this and not have been so much secretive about it. Did they want to do it? Because that's kind of what Apple does. I mean, they every time you see an update and you read through the notes of what the change did, a lot of times they're very vague what they did, what it did. Oh, it's performance improvement, so this or that. So, but everybody has to understand. There's some
reasons for some of that stuff, and I kind of get it. I mean, being a field technician myself, working with lots of different kinds of people with lots of different kinds of needs, having worked in schools, there's a time and a place for when you kind of have to, when you're trying to roll something out, you kind of have to cater to the lowest common denominator. Right. And there are times when it feels like, you can't make all the people happy all the time. So you have to kind of mitigate things, and you have to do things in such a way that's going to get the job done. And I agree. They should have been more communicative about it. Maybe that was forthcoming. Who knows? Maybe they didn't really. That could be, some of their downfalls. I'm not going to say they're like too big for their britches, but I think that there has been over the years a lot more hand holding to the point where power users and people who like to dig down into the file system, it seems like they're being cut off. Like, for years and years and years, we used Finder as a hierarchical, comparing it to Mac OS. I mean, it's very different. Everything's sandboxed in iOS, but, in Mac OS, people like me who were like, either a sysadmin or someone who has to deal with servers and architectures and filing files, just being organized. I always appreciated being able to navigate and get to things really easily. And then over the years, that kind of got stripped away to the point where, what do you mean I have to press the option key to get to the library? Yeah. Are you kidding me? Just kind of that kind of stuff. But, to somebody else who isn't quote unquote tech savvy, they don't know what that means, and they don't really care to know. And it's not one of their priorities. They just want to be able to use it. It needs to be easy to use and user friendly. So that's part of the reason why I just think they probably didn't have a good enough way at the time of communicating what was happening with the battery without being so technical, and it would have probably maybe had they done, I mean, who knows, maybe it would have pushed people away or something, I think, and not to bash on Android, but I know for a while there, a lot of people were getting freaked out because of the way the notifications would pop up every time you would install an app or every time you would do something or configure something. It would give you this litany and this big communication that was like over explaining what this app was going to do, and it scared people. It scared, like people in my demographic that I work with, or friends or family members. And, right away, then you'd see all these scathing articles about how, XYZ app, it's spying on you. And it's like, actually, it just asked you permission to use the camera. Right. And well, actually, the app that you downloaded and installed is something that you use to record your voice. So that's why it asked you to use the microphone, but it's spying on me. It's Big Brother. So I just think that maybe Apple didn't have at the time maybe a good way to explain it in simple enough terms that they were, and I don't even have a really good way off the top of my head. I mean, it's really not that easy to just come up with a simple, easy way to say that, Apple needed to adjust the software so that your phone wouldn't just spontaneously shut down on you. Right. Yes, it had to slow things down. I mean, just in our episodes and in the last couple episodes, I was complaining about when I upgraded to iOS 11, things dramatically slowed down. And for the longest time, I refused to put it on my husband's 5S because I was having problems on my 6S, and I was really annoyed with the fact that there was this constant, delay. And then, there's like people like you who are early adopters, or other people are upgrading to the latest phone. Like, oh, mine's great. I'm not having a problem. Like, well, I am, and it's frustrating. So yeah, that was really frustrating. And me of all people would have every right to complain about this kind of thing. And I'm not really complaining. But when I first got my 6S, remember I told you how the first, it was only 6 to 8 months in or something like that. And the battery was doing that thing where this was, prior to this update. I think that this was kind of what maybe started the whole thing. Like maybe the types of batteries that had been installed in the hardware were the type where they were aging in such a way that with the way that the software was engineered, I was having that problem where it would get to say 10, 20 or 10% or something. And then it wouldn't just go down incrementally. It would just shut off. Right. You'd be in the middle of doing something, and without warning, it would just cease to exist. It would just cease to function. Right. And you can't have a phone do that. That is just not acceptable. And I think Apple saw that and they thought, we need to make some adjustments here. And we probably don't need to make a big deal out of it, but we need to make some adjustments within the software so that this doesn't happen, because people rely on these devices to call 911, and, they're a lifeline. They really, really are. And so you need to have an acceptable user experience. It's like what you said in the beginning. I think it had to do with user experience and how can we make this a more positive user experience without really compromising on, making people either buy a new device or, so that they can still use their devices. And I don't think they quite got it is the problem. Right. It wasn't, slowing down the phone is one thing, but, when I have to sit there and wait a couple of seconds for an app to load, or, it went from being like a smooth, buttery experience to like, okay, this is just not acceptable. I can't be having apps freezing on me, especially for somebody like me who's a field technician and a consultant. And it's my job to demonstrate this kind of stuff to clients and, prospective Apple hardware purchasers. You know what I mean? Right. How embarrassing is it to be showing someone something and demonstrating something and have it kind of like fail or just not perform as expected? It's really embarrassing. So that really needed to be fixed. And they did just that. So I think that's what it really boils down to is it was, user experience had to be mitigated and now they've done it and it's out there. And I think they did great by the apology. I don't know if you want to call it, I guess, an apology letter.
Support article was really what it was.
It's like an internal memo that they sent out. Here's what happened. Here's what we're doing to fix it. And the fact that they've reduced. You posted an article to the show notes that we're going to share that you can now get a battery replacement for what is it, $29?
Yeah, and I wanted to touch upon that a little bit. A lot of people didn't even realize that Apple only charged $79 for a battery replacement. Really, if you think about it, isn't that bad. But
I was about to pay it.
Yeah, no,
I was,
and many
right
people
before
were.
I was ready to march in there and get it replaced.
And that's pretty fair considering. I know, again, we'll get the bashers like Android users who have phones that they can replace their own battery. Then also the design isn't as good. So, then what they did is they realized, okay, we want to alleviate our customer concerns, and they decided to implement a out of warranty from $79 to $29 starting. It's already started now. And that's going to go through the end of the year. And and Apple provided all this information on their site, and they're also going to do is add an iOS update that will introduce new features that'll give the users more visibility into the health of their iPhone's battery, which is great. I mean, really all they have now is just showing what battery life is left. You want to actually clearly see what the state of the battery is. I mean, third-party apps like iMazing, we've always been talking about, and others have the capability, like Geekbench 4 is another one that you can have on there now.
I've heard people mention Coconut battery. Have you used that one at all?
Yeah, yep, that one's.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, it's not bad. And Geekbench, I think, is probably one of the better apps, and it's only like 99 cents, I think it is. And
okay.
it'll not only does it give you a battery report, it gives you processor report and gives you system information. So it's actually very comprehensive.
I'm really looking forward to digging into that stuff, because like if you go into settings and then you go to battery, there's a section in there where it shows you your battery usage. And I've always kind of felt like it lies. That's what's been difficult about this. When I was troubleshooting and triaging my 6S as I was going through it, when I talked about it in other episodes, and of course now my husband has it, and I keep pestering. I'm like, how's the battery?
Right.
Like it shut down on the other night. I'm like, well, what percentage was it? I'm like geeking out on my husband. He's like, oh, I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, I need you to pay attention to that, because this is an issue, because that was the whole thing last time we talked, was that was the last step that I needed to do, was to nuke it and pave it and start it out all over again. Now this is, my husband's using it. He doesn't use it nearly as heavy as I was using it.
Right. And
so I figured that would be the ultimate test to find out if this was really a faulty battery or a battery replacement. Because remember, it wasn't the original battery. It was a replaced by Apple, and I really wanted to kind of get to the meat of the matter. And that would be a good test. So I'm still testing that out. But, the fact that they released this, whether or not we end up having to pay for it, it's only $29. It kind of makes it hurt a lot less, right?
Sure.
So I plan on just replacing it at the end of the year anyway. And then that'll just make the phone last that much longer for when my son gets it, is the way that I look at it. But this battery usage area, I really hope that gets a lot more smarter and is a lot more, better way of finding out really what the battery health is, because I really want to see that stuff. I want to see power cycles. I want to see basically what I want what I get out of my Mac. I want to be able to see power cycles and all of the amperage and things like that. I want to be able to dig into that stuff. I may not understand it, but I at least want access to it so I can learn about it. And that's not present in the iPhone right now. So I'm hoping that that's what we'd be getting.
I don't know. I would kind of tend to doubt that. I think an app like Geekbench might be your toy.
So because there's an app for that, you don't think it'll be built into the operating system?
Not that deep. I can see them putting in the battery conditioning and that kind of stuff. But I think Geekbench is going to be your friend if you want to really go deep. And I also want to mention too that I had heard some reports. Some of the Apple stores were a week, sometimes 2 weeks deep with appointments to get people to come in to get their batteries replaced.
So manage your expectations when you make an appointment.
Expect that, and also stock availability, having the actual battery in stock. I know the stock had been tight too, so you'd go into the store. Because what a lot of them were doing is they're having people mail your phones in. I'm like, how can you be without your phone?
That's gonna be tricky.
A little crazy. So just be aware of that too, and. We'll have it in the show notes with this article we talked about. This was on Mac Rumors, as well as we'll put the article for the support article that Apple posted about the iPhone and battery and performance. It's the way they wrote it, like you said, was in English. People will understand it and understand where their position was. There are some lawsuits that are out there right now.
That's sad, but it's kind of expected.
Kind of expected, but I would. Be confident to say that those things are probably going to get thrown out at some point, but we'll see. We'll see how things evolve. So
15 minutes will eventually go away, right?
So yes. And then the other big thing that was going on right now, Apple did release as we record this, they released this on Monday, the 8th, was iOS 11.2.2. Now what that fix add was added some security fixes to address the Spectra vulnerability, which everybody I'm sure has heard about because the press has gone absolutely gangbusters on this.
Yeah. So Apple is like ripe for the picking right now. That's what I did there.
but the thing is, this update, it seemed like Apple had a lot of it already pretty much patched between iOS and macOS. It's affecting Intel and ARM processors, and of course the processors that are considered in the iOS devices is ARM. But this I can't tell you enough to tell you to go out, do the updates. If you're running iOS 11, make sure you have 11.2.2 with these fixes, because it'll address a lot of the long listed bugs, fixes, and things like that. Because when 11.2 came out, it did make some fixes as well, but this is going to really keep things secure.
That's just the Spectre we have to address for iOS. We don't have to worry about Meltdown for iOS. That's for macOS, right?
Yeah, Meltdown and Spectre vulnerabilities. Yeah, it's more so Spectre. Yeah, it definitely is going to cover that stuff. I don't want to go too deep into this because
it's a little more technical. Just apply the patch.
Yeah, it was a very serious vulnerability, but honestly, I think the press overblew it, and they always do.
I think so too.
They did the same thing.
The sky is falling.
They did the same thing with the battery, and I was not at all surprised that they would continue on with that. So, but I think that's enough of those two topics. Why don't we go on and let's hear about your new purchase? You did get the new iPhone 8
Yeah,
Plus.
let's talk about some fun stuff.
And I know you're saying you're loving the camera portrait mode. I had it on the 8 Plus, and I had it on my 10. So tell me about it. What do you?
I'm
like
having
about
so much fun with this. I was remember for the longest time, I was so on the fence. Well, should I get the 8 or should I get the 8 Plus? I was really hemming and hawing on it, and finally, I just buckled down and I just kept saving and saving and saving. I thought, nope, this time I'm worth it. Darn it. So I got myself the Plus, and I'm really happy with it. I have been a little bit frustrated just with the size, like trying to figure out like how am I going to carry this thing around, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But as far as the camera goes, I'm really loving the camera. I got this just before the holidays, and it was the perfect time to get it because we had family visiting and the kids were doing all kinds of cute active stuff, and of course there's my puppy, and so I've got lots of victims basically that I can go and, all right, hold still. The portrait mode is kind of interesting because it's almost like a game in a way, because do you know what I'm talking about? Like when you go to take a photo of someone in portrait mode, you have to be at the right distance, and it lets you know there's, kind of gives you little guides that it's almost like playing a game in a way. Like it's like, Battleship or something, lock in onto your target. And if you're not close enough, it says, move closer or move farther away. And so it's a little bit of a dance. And it was funny. I had a birthday in between there. So my husband and I actually had the same birthday. We went to go see Star Wars, and I handed the phone off to my brother-in-law, and I told him, I said, it's kind of like a game. You kind of have to, and it was funny to watch someone else who hadn't been familiar with portrait mode do it for the first time. And I was kind of giggling, like, he's like, okay, you can see him kind of doing this little bit of a dance. And so that's kind of interesting using that. So I really enjoyed that. And then I love being able to click through and do the different lighting. And have you played with this? Have you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen pictures you've posted. You share pictures on Facebook and stuff, but I haven't seen any of that you've done, just yourself of portrait mode or
I don't know
things.
if I've put it out in public.
Yeah.
I mean, I just did one now when I was looking at it, and it is so cool the way you can go into the stage lighting and the contour lighting. And
you can do it after the fact too.
That's what you do. You do it after the fact. I mean, Well,
I try to do it while I'm composing the picture if like I'm patient enough. I mean, with my puppy, it's really difficult. I mean, she just doesn't want to sit still. So I'm in there like for a while. But you can do it after the fact, and I really enjoy. It's a little difficult. I'm trying to use Instagram more because I really just enjoy Instagram. I just haven't really participated in it nearly enough. And it's interesting when you take a portrait mode. It zooms in on stuff, right? And so you have to really get creative, which is what I enjoy. You have to get really creative about how you compose the shot, thinking about, okay, will this work once I crop it down into square? Because it's a portrait, so it's going to be, a regular, I forget what the ratio is, but, it'll be like a 4:3 or a 5:7 or something.
Right.
So you have to think about how much space you have to work with. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when it does, it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of
fun. So I've just been having a blast with it. One of the pictures that I shared with you that I'll probably put in the show notes just because I love it so much. It's so just weird. Over the holidays, my family and I went to, if you can imagine, there's a place called the Sonoran Desert Museum. So it's like way out in the middle of the desert right there. Mm-hmm. But they have a stingray exhibit. Believe it or not, they actually have a place where you can go in and pet stingrays. It is the coolest thing ever. They're very slimy and leathery, and it's really neat. And I had gone with my son on a field trip to do it, and I just knew we had to take their little cousins, and we had to go back and experience it again. And this time we actually got to feed them. And I waited. This is the thing that I love about photography is like it's almost kind of like, hunting in a way. You're just kind of waiting for the right moment. And, you can snap a whole bunch of pictures and they might not be that good. But boy, when that moment appears and you grab it, it's just so satisfying. And so I got this really incredible portrait mode picture of my son feeding a stingray a shrimp, and you could just see it come right up and open its mouth, and you could see its eyes and all this kind of stuff and just all these details, and it was just a lot of fun. So it was I think it's like when we first got slow motion, I was so like addicted to slow motion to the point where people were like, oh my God, here's another slow motion video. I don't think you can get sick of portrait mode pictures though, so I'm just having a blast with that. So I've really been enjoying that. And then the other thing was, and I put a link to it in the show notes, I'm still evaluating cases. I'm just crafty and picky like that. But I think I got a case that I'm pretty happy with. I do have another case that I got two of. I got one for my husband because I thought it was so cool. And I'll link to that one too. That one's a different wallet style. I told you I was looking for a wallet style. But the one that I settled on that I'm going to link to, it's made by, it's made by Silk. And it's just called, the iPhone 7, 8 Plus. It fits, all the different sizes. It's a Vault Protective Credit Card Grip Cover. And of course I had to get it in purple, and it's purple orchid. And it's just what it says it is. It is a case that just snaps right on. It's very grippy, and it's got like a slit cut into it. So it's just a little bit thicker on the outside, but it doesn't make it like super bulky. You'll have to look at the pictures to see what it looks like. But it fits like 5 credit cards in it, and a $5 bill or a $10 bill or 20 or something like that. You can put a combination of cash and credit cards in here, and it hides them. The way that I was using it, I had a little pocket on the back, and I really didn't like the idea that every time I took a picture, or if someone took a picture of me taking a picture, you could see my credit card information a little bit. It was kind of exposed. So I started putting like a credit card or a business card in front of it or something, but it was just kind of icky. With this one, it covers it for the most part. There's just one little slit where you can put your finger to push them out. And then, Dave, I modified it. I added 2 more pieces to it, and I'll try to get some good pictures of it, but I added a magnetic ring on the back of it. So there's actually, you can get, I think some of the things are called pop sockets. Have you ever heard of those?
Oh, yeah. Those are like the craze.
Just for reference, so you know what I'm talking about. It's basically something that you can glue onto the back of the phone. Right. And of course, in this case, I'm gluing it onto the back of a case, so it's not glued directly to the phone. This one in particular, it's not a pop socket, but the reason why I brought that up is because I was looking at reviews of this case, and I saw another person who had pop sockets on it, and that's what sold me on it. I was like, oh, great, because I could put this ring on it. So it's a magnetic. It's basically a piece of metal, but there's a really great, really sturdy ring that flips around. So basically every time I set my phone down, it's almost like a little kickstand that's already out there. You can flatten it, you can turn it, you can rotate it. It's really large. You can put, your thumb through it, your middle finger through it. You can pretty much put any finger in any kind of orientation or angle that you want. And what's really great about this, because like I said in the beginning, not only was I struggling with how am I going to carry this thing around, how am I going to take pictures with it? Because I have not really been one of those people that likes to use the volume button as a shutter button. But I've been experimenting with that, and selfies are still a little bit difficult to do. But with such a larger screen size, I needed something that I could figure out, like, well, how am I going to balance this? And this ring comes in really handy for that. So I found all different kinds of ways that I can hold it that helps me compose my pictures a lot better.
Sure.
So I really like that. Really, really am loving that. And the fact that it's magnetic, it came as a set. I got this thing that clips onto your, your vents in your car. And so it's a magnet. So when I get in my car, all I have to do is just pop it on this little magnet, and it just sticks there. And no, it does not demagnetize my cards. I did test that out. I was a little afraid of that, but I read in the comments, and a lot of people, I guess the magnet just has to be a lot stronger. Now, you cannot put a hotel key card in one of these things, though. That will get demagnetized. I actually learned some things as I was researching this, that they're made with a strip that's a lot weaker. Basically, the magnetic shavings can get demagnetized really easily, but credit cards seem to be pretty safe. So I haven't had any issues with that. So I'm loving that. And then that's not all. Mm-hmm. Then have you ever seen, maybe you should ask your wife about it. She might be familiar with this. I think it's more of a girly thing, but it's called a bandolier. So they make these cases where basically it's like a strap. It's a really long strap that you can kind of hook over your shoulder. So it's almost like you're wearing the phone like a purse in a way. Mm-hmm. But the way that it's oriented is that it hangs the phone upside down. And for the sole reason of being able to pick it right up and snap a picture. You wouldn't want it hanging the other orientation. I mean, it sounds backwards, right? It's right. Upside down, literally. You wouldn't want the hooks hanging from the top of the phone, because then when you went to pick it up, you wouldn't be able to snap the picture in the right orientation. So I've been looking at these things, and, they're made of leather and they have studs and all this extra stuff that I don't want. Right. So I modified this case in such a way that I took some it's like this kind of like a silicone stretchy material that I had gotten, just at the craft store. And like I said, I'll take some pictures and document this for people who are interested in this sort of thing. And I made my own bandolier. Basically, I braided a long section of this to go around my shoulder, and I hooked it underneath where the speaker cutouts are. And I've been using it great for the last several weeks, and it's perfect. And so now I can walk around and listen to podcasts, and I can pick up the puppy, and I can, do all these things, hands free, because I have this thing kind of, strapped around my shoulder, and I kind of sling it around my back. And, you have to learn how to walk with it so you don't crack the screen or things like that. But it's been working out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with my modifications and little doohickeys and things that I've gotten for this phone. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. I don't know if you could tell.
Having fun with a case. Okay.
Yes. Because I'm just crafty like that. And then, so maybe in the next episode, I'll tell you about the other case that I got for my husband. And that one has a credit card and a magnet. Now it's really cool too. So
I'll tell you, I did get a new case. I have the I have the Apple case, the leather case. It's not cheap. It's $100. But it's full out leather. But the interesting thing was with Apple, they put a disclaimer in the case saying that you have to put your credit cards face up in the slot that's in the cover.
Okay.
So because that's how it protects it from any magnetic issues. So,
I see.
So it has a front flap for credit cards, and then
so it's a folio.
Yeah, it covers the phone.
Okay.
We'll put the link on the show. We can put the link in the show notes, and it covers the phone, which I'm liking. But the only thing is, it is more challenging to take a picture, because now I have to hold the cover in one hand and the phone in the other, and then take a picture, as you're probably experiencing too.
So well, see, mine doesn't have the cover. That's why I did away with all that stuff. That's why I was so picky about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm liking it because it is protecting the phone in a way, so it covers the glass. But it does.
And you don't have to have another bulky wallet in your pocket.
Right. So I did get that. So I'll just throw that in there.
I am so proud of you.
So let's dig into another topic here. I was kind of inspired again. I hate to keep going back to what I talked about in my special interest group iPhone.
Hey, that's okay. It's always good to have good information.
2 full hours of discussion, and I had started my discussion was how to save space using iCloud. And I'm not going to get into that topic, but that's what kind of inspired me to learn, talk a little bit more about the new high efficiency image format that's out there now.
Starting to think I might have a bit of an influence on you. This is scary.
Well, I mean, I did buy the iPhone 10 in 64 gigabytes. I did not, and the last phones I had purchased were 256, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet and do it. So I mean, I have the 200 gig iCloud storage plan, and I'm only and I have about 40 gigs of photos. But the nice thing about it is, you look at how much space I have on my iPhone right now. I have 29 gigs of 64 used.
Yep. See, isn't that nice?
So everything is on iCloud, and that's what I kept stressing the fact of that. And iOS 11 they've got just a tremendous job of being able to monitor and see what's on your device, as well as you can go into the iPhone storage setting under the settings and actually review what large attachments you actually have, and it tells you what's actually stored on the phone itself. So it separates the storage from what's the local storage and what's on iCloud. So the nice thing of what Apple did is they implemented this new file photo system called HEIF. and that's stands for high efficiency image format. And they also have HEVF, which is the video format. Now, you have to remember that with photos were always saved in JPEG, and JPEG is generally can be is highly compressed, but it also is set in one space. But the nice thing with the photos now is what Apple's done is, well, not really done. This is not their technology, but they're using it.
It's a standard, right?
It's really a standard, yeah. And really, what it does is, like you have a JPEG photo that's around 5 megabytes, and most of the cameras, the 10 and 8, both phones we have, take pretty high quality photos. The file size will get reduced to 2.6 to 3 megabytes as a result of the compression. But the nice thing is, this technique, there's no sacrifice in the image quality. So and that's what we had quite a bit of a debate about that. I don't know if I want to do that. I'm a RAW. I take RAW for photos. But I said, it doesn't diminish any of the quality of the photo at all. And
so you could get these blown up into a poster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't change. But you know what? Apple did provide a way to going into the camera and actually, setting the camera capture to whether it be high efficiency or most compatible. Now, when this format first came out, there was some concerns because when the file gets saved on a Mac, it doesn't matter because when you sync your photos with Apple Photos, it automatically converts it. So if you were to go save it, it'll just convert to JPEG for you right on the fly. But those PC users out there at the time were having a bit of a challenge because that file format would not open on a PC.
Yeah. So what's the status of that now?
I believe they've got some converters out there, and I'm going to talk about a converter that I found, but actually it's a Mac version that's from our friends again from iMazing. They came out with a HEIC converter, which will convert. I'm sorry, they do have a PC version of this app as well. So I keep forgetting.
There you go.
iMazing does both, but we're not talking about PC. We talk about Mac and iOS here. But yeah, so that's one of the biggest things that it has out there as far as giving you some more efficient ways of compressing the photos. And I'm pretty happy with it. I don't have any complaints. And like I said, the photos have been in superb quality. And you've seen some of the photos I've posted on Facebook. I mean, I was sitting on the bus. I captured a photo of the Las Vegas Welcome to Las Vegas photo, the sign. I mean, but it was a really beautiful day. That day it was real crystal clear. And I'm on the double decker bus at the top, and I just aimed it.
And you're moving. It's a moving target.
Well, actually, the bus driver was nice and kind of slowed down so we could take pictures.
Yeah, he knows that everybody wants to take a picture of that.
I was like, wow, this really turned out nice. And of course, it's the iPhone 10, which has a really great cameras, and as well as the 8 Plus does. But I thought it was really a great way of taking pictures, but also saving space, and that's really what the kind of motivated me to talk about this topic. It was the fact that you can save space, but the biggest thing is, and I think a lot of people don't do, is that they're resistant to paying the extra cost for iCloud, the iCloud storage. Yeah. You really got to do it.
It's so worth it. It is so worth it.
I asked in the room, I says, who's paying? Who still has the 5 gigabyte plan? And I'm like, half the room raised their hand. I mean, guys, at the bare minimum, get the 50 gig plan because 50 gigs is 99 cents a month. I mean, it's going to cost you $12 or $13 a year.
You'll sleep so much better at night, just knowing that it's protected and it's backed up.
Don't deal with it. I'm paying for the 200 gig plan, which is $299 a month, and there's also
I have the terabyte.
You have you take.
We have a whole family.
You got the whole family, and I don't take that much. The 200 gigs is more than sufficient for what.
Yeah, I mean, my uses are different, and so it's way overkill for just one person. But yeah, I mean, at the bare minimum, get the 50. I mean. Right. What's the harm in it? I mean, the way that I always explain it to people when they ask me about it, I always say, all right, look at the costs over the long term. Right. If you're going to be buying hard drives, I mean, and I still recommend that you do that because you really should have multiple backups on multiple different types of media. But if we're talking really about the average Joe, the average person who really doesn't want to be bothered with this kind of stuff. And I hate to pick on my friends, and of course I'm not going to identify them, but I have a friend who they were taking all of their pictures and all of their wedding pictures, baby photos, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know why they just didn't know any better. I guess they just thought they were protecting their assets there, but they were taking all the pictures and offloading them onto this one drive. And their cat knocked it over, and she lost like 15 gigabytes, which, seems like a small amount by today's standards. But I mean, that was like a whole, history of wedding pictures and all kinds of stuff. And they're gone. And it would have cost them thousands of dollars to go get it, take it apart in a clean room or something and try to get them extracted. And that's with no guarantee that the pictures can be recovered. So don't do that to yourself. Why bother? Because then if you're going in that direction, then you've got to get multiple hard drives, and you've got to manage the hard drives, and then you look at the cost of those hard drives and what the expense is over the time of having to own those drives and manage them and the overhead. Just buy the iCloud. And like we talked about so many times, I've talked about it on other podcasts, I've talked about it on this podcast, every year around the holidays is the time when you're going to want to scope out those sales. They just had one not long ago on Amazon, and I think the big box stores and eBay and places like that, where you can buy gift cards at like a good 15% off, and you just buy either a whole bunch of them or you get like $100 gift card, and then your year is paid up. You just, or ask for that as a gift for your birthday or Christmas or holidays or whatever, and just keep topping up your iTunes credit, and then it won't be as painful. You won't have to think about it.
Right.
It won't even touch your credit card.
Yeah. It's a good segue actually, because last episode we spent quite an in-depth time talking about the iCloud family sharing, and we talked about that and showing that how much more efficient the iCloud family sharing is. And I saw it with one of the folks that were in our meeting. He's got the 2 terabyte plan, and he has all his family storing them. He's got like over 600 gigabytes worth of photos, which is that's a lot. And he's got that all backed up over time, and it's all backed up in the cloud. So. But why don't you tell us? You had a little bit of an update that since we last talked about the family sharing.
I've been slicing and dicing, and I've been trying in different ways. At first, I tried so I think I had told you the last time I sacrificed my husband, my poor husband, and I kind of changed all his stuff over, and it's all turned out really well. He hasn't lost anything. I think there might be one exception, and like maybe there's a game that he plays that I think the scores were tied to Game Center, but I think he can still, I have to go back and dig through this, but I think he can still sign in to Game Center with his old Apple ID, but it wasn't a priority of his. In fact, I don't even, I was looking at that the other day. I don't even think you can download Game Center. I think it's just integrated into iCloud now. It's not like it's a separate app. I don't think. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I think it might be maybe like it's marching the plank or something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's gotten any love. Yeah. So, it's just kind of gotten low prioritized. And then I kind of experimented. So I thought, okay, well now this is a family. So you figure this is our immediate family. So it's my husband, myself, and our 2 children, and then my dad. And we were using, so this is something you got to think about. I mean, you really have to think about this stuff if you're going to do these sorts of things. We're using my husband's Apple ID as the family organizer. Right. And then there's 2 different paths then, if you will, that you can take. You can either go the way that we've been going. Remember, you and I have talked about this in the past where we have that one shared account. Okay. So my husband's ID has now become that it serves a dual purpose. It is the family organizer, but it is also that shared account that we've been using for the last decade or so of purchasing stuff. So we didn't want to lose that history. So I decided ultimately, that's the update, is that I was just going to stay on that course, that I took my dad's phone and our kids' phones and my phone, and we basically use his ID to sign into just the Apple, the iTunes and the App Store. So we each have our own iCloud accounts for everything else, our main iClouds. And of course, his is that for 2, but then we use his ID and his password for iTunes and App Store. So what that means is if like my dad goes and buys an app, or if he logs into something, it's going to send my husband's phone a notification with 2-factor authentication. And so he'll text me and say, hey, I got this alert. And so I set it up so that if he's at work, I don't have to like, hey, what's the verification code? I have it set up so that it'll text my phone. So I kind of have a way to sort of like hack my own account. I don't know if you know how you want to look at it that way, but that's something to consider, is that if you pick one person to be the not only the family organizer, but also the main account that's used on every single device in that family. It's almost like a combination of MDM with, multiple device or mobile device management with iCloud that you've kind of sort of like rolled your own way. That's sort of kind of what it's like. And so the consideration is that if you do that, you have to be careful with whom you do it with, because that person is going to need to verify things. And then unless you add another trusted device, which I did, making it my phone, then I can get the verification code that way. So it just, it's my dad. It's not like he's constantly installing apps, but if you had a family member who was, that might be an issue. That might be kind of a negative user experience. The other path, of course, is then to use it as true family management, where yes, that family organizer is off on their own and separate, but then you have the issue where, like, let's say when the kids want to buy an app, they have to ask to buy, right? And our kids are little enough that even if this is something we have to think about as they become teenagers and kind of want more and more autonomy, they're still going to have to hand us the device and say, here, I'd like to buy this song or this app or something. And it may be something we'll have to change later on in the future. And I tried it a couple different ways, but for right now, and I have to say the caveat is like, because I said they're on 4S's, so they're not running iOS 11. If they have newer devices, and again, this will be in the future as they get older, by then we'll probably be more caught up on the same operating system, might even, spring for another device or something. But by the time they have iOS 11, then I think it'll work better. But for the time being, we have to keep it just one shared Apple ID, because when I tried to switch one of my sons over to his own, so that, when he did want to buy an app and requested to buy it, what ended up happening was, I'll just give you an example. There was like this little geometry game that he liked to play. So he was like, Mommy, can I buy it? And I was so proud of him. Like, he went into the App Store and he read all the reviews and he gave me this whole, he downloaded the free version. It was one of those try before you buy type of things. And he was like, Mommy, look, you can, here's all the parental controls and this is how you can do it. And you can set time limits and like all this stuff. And I was really, really impressed with how well he was at 11 years old. He was evaluating the merits of this app. I was like, sure, you earned it. You got iTunes gift cards for Christmas. You can buy it. So I had him buy it on his account. Well, then we ran into the problem with, of course, his brother wanted to play it and they wanted to play together.
Right.
I couldn't install it on his brother's phone because it was linked. The way it's supposed to work. Yeah. It's supposed to be family sharing. If he buys it, everybody else is supposed to be able to access it too. Right. But I think the problem is that part of it only works in iOS 11 and onward.
There you go. That's why.
So that's where we ran into a gotcha.
Yep.
So for the time being, again, with having kids using older devices, as we do, as a lot of families do, they repurpose these older devices for gaming. That's something you have to be aware of. That's a gotcha that you have to work around. So, in the future, like I said, as we catch up, as the kids get older, as their needs change, then we'll probably give them, have them do their own. I did convert them back to children. I had lied about their age back before, COPPA came along, and I'm such a, mom of the year here. Right. So, but I was a good mom and I changed them back to children. So now it shows, their appropriate ages and that sort of thing. And so that part's there. So it's just a matter of what version of the operating system is on, what type of device you're using it, the needs that you have at the time. So that's what I ultimately decided. The path that for the time being was to just use one shared Apple ID. And then later on, we'll branch off into other ones. I also did experience, I was thinking about that too, because when you want to purchase an app, that's the thing between, I just said how you should try to keep your iTunes credit topped up so that you can afford the iCloud, at a better price. Well, that's great. But then if you are using family sharing and you're not using the same ID and someone wants to buy something, if you're the family organizer, it has to come off of whatever credit card is there for the family organizer.
Right.
And that could suck for some people. That could be another bit of a gotcha depending on how you wanted to experience that. And so one of the ways that I found around that was to, instead of using anyone's particular credit card, you get one of those gift cards, like, because the kids have gotten those as presents, people for birthdays or whatever have gotten those, vanilla or, mall. It's basically, it's a gift card Visa, but it has the Visa logo on it. So it works just like a credit card.
Right.
You can't like top it up or anything like that. I think there are some versions, but these are not those. And so you can just use a gift card. So, keep $20 on it or whatever it is. And then whoever wants to buy something can just buy it off of that. So it's not like it's tapping into anyone's particular credit card per se. So that was just another little sort of kind of a hack that I discovered that seemed to work out okay. And I thought, okay, well, we can use this instead of using any one particular Visa card. So that was the update that I want to share about iCloud. And of course, that'll change over time, but that's where we're at right now. And that's what's working for us in our situation, in our family. Great. And so, your mileage will vary, but that's one way that you can do it.
All right. So before we go, I want to make sure we hit on a couple of apps that we have favorites. I added one here in our show notes as well. But you found one called Multi-Timer that you like. And why don't you share your views of this app?
So this is like a truly like in touch with iOS type of thing, right? Because not only is it you can use it on your iPad and your iPhone, you can use it on your Apple Watch too. And it's really been great. It's called Multi-Timer. And let me tell you, I want to say it's like $4.99 or something, but just the free version alone, this is one of those apps where you can get the free version, but it is just so darn cool. And the stuff that you can do with it, you just want to like throw money at the developer, like take my money, So it's just a really good app. It's called Multi-Timer, and it is what the name is. It's a bunch of timers, like, how on your Apple Watch, you can just use the built-in timers. You've got the stopwatch, you've got the timer app, you've got a countdown. Well, this does all that like on steroids. It's just, you can make them all different kinds of colors. You can do a countdown. We ran into a situation, this was over, I've had this for a while, but I really, really put it through its paces over the winter break because, the kids are out of school and we're having, behavior issues and discipline and all that kind of stuff. And we needed for our purposes, there's just one example. For our purposes, we needed some way to keep track of tallies. For the kids, like trying to, get them to behave. If they could do this, they would get positive tallies. If they did this, they got negative tallies. And so I set up one of the timers. So I was able to do all this stuff on my watch. I set it up on my iPhone. It's synchronized to my watch. And now it's so awesome, Dave. I just like have to raise my wrist and raise my finger like, I'll be good. I'll be good. It's the best ever. So I just love this just from a parenting perspective. But you can set all different kinds of timers with all different kinds of uses. Yeah. There's icons. You can change the icons, the colors. You can have countdown, count up. You can have a timer. You can have a free timer. You can have set timers. You can do like a Pomodoro timer. Like I said, tallies, where you just need to keep track of, just for example, like, how you have turnstiles where you go through and it counts every time someone passes through the gate. You could do something like that where you're keeping track of attendance or something. So this was just a great app for that kind of stuff. So I put a link to it in the show notes. And like I said, it's one app. It's an in-app purchase. But like I said, the free version just does so much. And then it synchronizes to your watch, and then you can control it from there. So I really, really love it. So you got to check that out.
And I wanted to talk about there's been, this app has been out there for a long time. It's got over 10 million users, so it must be popular. It's a third-party camera app. It's called Camera Plus.
I have that. Yeah,
Camera Plus is has been a great app for editing your photos beyond what the photo editing does in the Photos app that's already on your iPhone. Now, make sure there are some knockoffs. Make sure you're going with the one that says Camera with the Plus logo.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a link in the show notes on Mac Rumors that Camera Plus did add some really nifty additions. The app is now able to added the ability to transfer applied edits between images, and you haven't been able to do that before. So when you're transferring complex applied edits to another photo, you can select the image, and then you can do it in the light box. So there's a light box that shows all your photos. So it's a lot more powerful when it comes to doing the edits, and it's a really great app, and I've used it for years. But they've really made some more improvements. They also added some improvements on the iPhone 10 with the different edits. And additionally, they did for those people who like to shoot with RAW, which is the uncompressed format. Camera Plus now correctly honors the preference to saving the representation independently of the JPEG and HEIF, which we talked about earlier, asset when you export to the camera roll. Now the editing screen, like I said, has improved. So now you can, especially on iPhone 10 displays, it's a really nifty app. And like I said, you've used it before.
Yep, I used it since the early days when it came out. Yeah. In fact, I've been friends with Lisa. She's a model. She's the one that I guess co-founded it, and I don't know that she's involved with it too much anymore. But yeah, I've been using it that long. In fact, it's like my very secondary camera app. And I'll tell you, if there was a way to make it the default camera app, I probably would, because it's really that good. It's my go-to when I want to take a macro shot, because I love macro shots.
Sure.
This is one of those apps. This is just like, I have to get nerdy for a second here. You know, when the app updates come down and, most people are just like, just update it. Well, I actually I don't have auto app updates turned on specifically because I do actually like to read the updates, the bug fixes and all that kind of stuff. And Camera Plus is one of those ones where I actually enjoy reading the whole, I'm one of those nerds that sits through the entire movie and watches all the credits at the end to see if there's something at the end, or just to appreciate all the people who are involved in the movie. I too like to read the app update notes. So just so you know, there are people out there like me who you're not writing them for nothing.
Nothing wrong with that. Now, they do have two separate costs for the iPhone version and the iPad version. So it's $2.99 for the iPhone version and it's $4.99 for the iPad version. And of course, it can be downloaded from the App Store. There's a direct link. And that is Camera Plus.
Good pick. Everybody, that's like a must-have. I think you just have to get that.
So with that, let's wrap this up. I appreciate you joining me, Melissa, and we had I can't wait for this new year. Continue on and have some great times. Future episodes. So
we've got stuff in the bag.
We do. There's just so much. There's so much to talk about. We want to keep it into an hour. So let's wrap this up.
We'll wrap it up for now. We'll put on a bow on it just for you just this time.
That's right. And I thank you for listening, and we hope you are more in touch with iOS. And after hearing this episode, subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcatcher and show your friends how to look us up in iTunes. We look forward to bringing you more useful information in future episodes. I'm Dave Ginsburg, and you can follow me on Twitter at DaveG65.
And I'm Melissa Davis, and you can find me online all over at the Mac Mommy.
Stay tuned and subscribe for future episodes, and